interest to come together and participate. So welcome to all our guests. I would also very specifically and very particularly welcome our panelists for tonight. First, Chiara, I think I have seen you on screen. First, I'd like to welcome Chiara.
Good morning, good evening.
Good evening. I'm sure she will do her own introduction better than I would, but she's a prominent political and education figure, I would say, really a heavyweight in politics. She has done a lot to encourage STEM. She's been part of the French government's plan for developing women in leadership. She was invited by the G7 to think about a national action plan for France to foster the attractiveness of STEM for girls and women. She's the one who created the Women's Forum Strategic Committee in 2018. She has worked for over 15 years on economic bilateral cooperation agreements. She is extremely honored to have you here tonight, Chiara. We're also extremely honored to have Cal Denzel join us tonight. She's the head of diversity and inclusion for the Caring Group. I've known Cal for 20 years, so that's why I will have the privilege of calling her Cal instead of Kalpana. We go back to IMD in 1997 when I was a young researcher and she was running the MBA career office very successfully, I must add. And her career has been phenomenal since then. And then we also have Florence Inamura, who works for Caring, and she also has had a fantastic career. She's been in Japan. She was Caring's first Japanese employee. Now she's back in France. She's an HEC alumni, and she's going to talk to us about what kind of leader she wants to be and what it's like to have a woman CEO. So some really great women with us. Thank you very much. The way we're going to run this is we're first going to start with an interview, the video of the Global Women Forum's closing interview, which was between Chiara and Elisabeth Moreno, our minister, and they will talk about what happened at the end, some of the conclusions to the Women's Forum. And then we will have a conversation around the barometer that was also a result of the latest Global Women's Forum, which Chiara will present. We will then move on to Cal, who will talk about how women leadership has evolved, the qualities of women leadership that have appeared and taken the limelight during the COVID crisis. And then we'll speak with Florence. Thank you. And welcome again.
If you can just give me 1 minute, I have an issue with my computer.
I remember the good old days when we had issues as faculty members in the classroom. Now we have Zoom issues and everyone has them with us. I should also salute Laurent for being here. There's very few men with us tonight. Laurent will be our moderator. And so thank you for being with us tonight, Laurent.
I'm coming. Okay.
Despite being fully virtual, this 2020 global meeting gave us and gave me, I have to say, a lot of energy and food for thought to build an inclusive future, especially during this turbulent time. So thank you to the whole Women's Forum team. And Chiara, I would love to know, to start this conversation, what are your main takeaways and your main learnings from this very unique edition?
Oh, thank you, Sandrine. But a special heartfelt thank you to you, dear Elizabeth, for being always at our side. This is the first virtual Women's Forum. For me, it's historical. We felt a sense of urgency. Listening to all these wonderful people, we had head of state, the CEOs, civil society, these all inspiring, committed speakers. I feel confident. I feel really optimistic. I feel that we are more determined than ever to accelerate the Women's Forum impact and action. There is a change in the paradigm. We feel it. We know where we stand. We know what we should do. We know that we have the opportunity to prepare a she recovery. A she recovery means not only associated women to fully benefit of the recovery, not only be involved in what we think is important, but involved in each decision process, public and private. This is the she recovery. And, let's see, we had a Marshall Plan that rebuilt Europe. After the pandemic, we badly need an Ursula plan, a Christine plan to restore not only dignity, justice, but also sustainable, green, inclusive economic growth and hope in Europe. And why not all around the world? A Halima recovery plan in Singapore, a Olga recovery plan in Mexico, and of course, next year, a Kamala recovery plan in the United States. This is a momentum. We feel it. We feel the sense of urgency again. It's a momentum, and the momentum is ours. And the public opinion, it's more than ready. Then let's go. Let's work for this gender equality that's necessary, not for us women, but for all of us. This is what I just felt in these 3 amazing days of discussion.
Minister Elizabeth Moreno, Chiara said that there is a momentum where we can make sure women can play a role in the economy and in the recovery plan. How will the government in France, but I would love to say all governments across the world, will make sure that women are part of this recovery and not victims of the economic crisis?
Thank you for this very important question, Sandrine. And before I start, I want to tell you, Chiara, how pleased I am to conclude this very important edition of the Women Forum with you. Women around the world are holding high stakes in the current economics, and that's the reason why it is becoming critical to put them at the center of our plans for the future. And first, I need to insist on the fact that the current economic crisis has made the situation of the most fragile among all women, those victims of physical violences, more dramatic than ever. And I believe that the first right of any woman around the world should be the right to protect her physical and moral integrity and not to be exposed to physical violence. And how to make sure that women are not forgotten in the recovery plans. I'm truly convinced that women should be part of the solution to the current social and economic crisis. And we simply can't afford to leave 50% of our talents out of the equation as we need to rebuild our economy. Have we made them central enough in the recovery plans that were designed around the world? Probably not. And although we've evolved in a positive direction, we know that women will be hardly impacted by this crisis, and we need to put them at the center of the battle. Our country is making an absolutely massive effort of $100 billion to boost our economy. Our recovery plan is still under discussion in the parliament, and we want all companies benefiting from this public support to take action to improve gender equality in their organization. They will be accountable for their results. But, you know, the cultural fight is not won yet. And the playground is still far from being even for women. They were more exposed during the sanitary crisis, holding the majority of the frontline jobs in the health and services sector. And they are in general more exposed to the economic downturns by nature of their precarious employment situations. I think, you know, we really need to use this crisis to create the conditions for women to emerge stronger so they can contribute further to the economic, politics, and social sphere of our society, and in particular to give them better access to technology and to the opportunities that will be offered by the digital revolution, which is at play across all the compartments of our lives. Because we have seen one sector that has not been impacted by this crisis is the tech industry. And if we had more women, more girls playing their game there, I think it will significantly change the game.
Chiara, I'm interested to hear your thoughts on this, because I know that the Women's Forum published a barometer highlighting that during the pandemic, the risk is super high that women are back to traditional roles. There is also in this barometer numbers that are showing that women are asked not to go after the education to go in the tech ecosystem. So what do you expect from governments to build this inclusive recovery, to build these opportunities, to encourage women, for instance, to go in the tech environment and jobs, for instance?
We just heard by the minister, it's very encouraging. I mean, there is this consciousness, this awareness of the public powers in states such as France, one of the leaders in the G7 countries, of what should be done. You see, when I hear the minister, and I'm not surprised because I know her well and I know how much she's fighting for that since years, it's to increase the number of girls and women in the jobs of the future. We still don't know what these jobs will look like, but we know that those jobs give you the key of success to transform the world. And if you want to be sure that women are there where we can really make the difference, it's in this kind of jobs. This barometer, Sandrine, it's a very precious tool for us and for the political leaders, because combined with the expertise of our daring circle, it will reinforce the capacity that we have to become a worldwide referent. You know, when you have data, you can tell. When you have the scientific expertise, you can tell, you can be listened. Then the data and instrument on gender equality and on crucial issues. It has never been done before on climate, business, health, STEM, AI. We reinforce our capacity to collectively act. And I will give you some examples very shortly because the time is short, but I'm very proud of what we're doing collectively. And thank you for all the partners around the table, public and private, that are helping us. We will launch a STEM key project in Europe. As you heard, Ursula von der Leyen herself encouraged us and mentioned it in her message. And we are supported very strongly by Commissioner Maria Gabriel. With the STEM Key project, we aim to attract, retain, Elizabeth, what you like, more women and girls in STEM. And one way to convince them is just to explain them, make the link on purpose. If girls want to have a positive impact, they have to have the skills. And what tells the parameter? The parameter tells us that 78% of the people is willing to have more women in STEM and AI because it will benefit to the society and to the growth. I mean, the public is very mature. This is a very good surprise. That means that the public is there. The public opinion is with us. We will also launch initiative in another key issue, climate. How can you fight against climate without women? And to help them to acquire the STEM skills, because to fight against the climate change, you need to have STEM skills, of course, and STEM leadership. I know, Elizabeth, how important is this for you? And I know how much you are involved in this transformation of the world. And I would like also to highlight something else that's very dear to Elizabeth too. It's access to capital. If you don't have access to capital, you cannot empower women. We will just increase inequalities and not reduce them. And I'm happy to announce that with our partners, we have a very, very good news. We created an instrument, a unique instrument worldwide, that will give us the possibility to measure the progress of diversity in the supply chain. Why the supply chain? You know, public procurement, only in Japan, it's 150,000 billion of euros. Public procurement, and women have less than 1%. This cannot continue. This is a responsibility of the public and private sectors. And our ambition is really to increase the participation of women in public and private sector tenders and procurements, but also to involve them on who decides the priority in this part. And we need you, Elizabeth, because to reduce this inequality in access to capital, we need key leaders, politic leaders, to prepare the environment. The private sector cannot do everything alone. We have to provide this environment, juridical regulation that gives the possibility to more women to have access to capital and, of course, procurement. And you know, public opinion is ready. 84% of the people we asked in the G7 country call for innovative policies to provide equal access to capital. Wonderful.
Elizabeth Moreno, you benefit from a personal experience of being one of the 2 rare women in STEM and in executive position before being appointed minister. So before being appointed, you were managing director Africa and vice president at HP, and previously president and general manager at Lenovo France. So how will you make sure, are your plans to make sure that we offer women access to AI and, like Chiara was highlighting, access to capital, which might be the key at the end to make sure women are growing in those roles as well?
Sandrine, first, I should say that it should hopefully not be as difficult for the next generation of women leaders as it was for me to climb the corporate and social ladder. You know, I grew up in a world where being a Black woman from modest origins would almost always bar talented individuals from realizing their dreams and ambitions. And I was lucky enough to have access to education and to meet people who would believe in me along the way, and help my luck by working quite hard my entire life, you know. But we need to think about how to make it easier for diverse talent to break through the glass ceiling, because that's all we are talking about all the time. And the first enabler for that is indeed to make sure that young women have access to the STEM education, as Chiara said, and these education will serve as a springboard for them to embrace digital career. I think education is the basis for everything. You know, as Mandela said, education is the most powerful weapon that you can use to change the world. And if we manage to encourage women to go to this road of STEM, considering that it is now part of our entire life, you know, digital is part of our education life, our work, our entertainment, and we need to make sure that girls understand that. It's not a geek activity. You know, everybody can embrace these today. And, you know, today in Europe, and Chiara, this is coming from your report, less than 1 out of 5 STEM graduates are girls. But these girls are using these tools every single day. And we all know that this ratio is determined way back, you know, during childhood, when self-representation starts and crystallize, and when little girls start and create unconscious biases for themselves that will prevent them to embrace scientific careers and studies. And I'm talking about girls, but I want also to mention the teachers, I want to mention the parents, you know, everybody should feel accountable from telling them, hey, you know what? You can do it. You can do it. And the same goes for artificial intelligence. We can't let the development of the algorithm that will govern a number of the key decisions affecting our lives to be predominantly managed by men and excluding women. The result would be the reproduction in the algorithm of the unconscious bias, potentially at work in the brains of their male creators, you know that, resulting in more discrimination for women again. And research shows that this bias could affect up to 85% of artificial intelligence output by 2022. And if we don't take care of them, that's the situation we are creating for the future. And I want to say, to finish on this, ladies and gentlemen, because I know we have gentlemen who understand how these things are important, talent has no gender. I was extremely proud to see two extraordinary women, Emmanuelle Charpentier and Jennifer Doudna, receiving lately the Nobel Prize of Chemistry for their work on genome editing. It is our responsibility and our opportunity to create the conditions for more Emmanuelle and more Jennifer to emerge in the future.
Thank you, Iona, for showing the video. I felt like I was in the room with you. I don't know how the other participants felt, but very, very meaningful conversation. I think what's important to bear in mind this evening, this morning, depending on where you are in the world, is that we're talking about the role of women in leadership. So women leaders, not the role of women in the business world, but really women leaders. And that's where I think that point around role modeling and making sure that the ecosystem and the environment is designed to encourage young women to grow into these leadership roles is critical. So I would like to hand the floor over to Chiara to share with us the results of the barometer and where we are at actually as women leaders. The way we thought we would run the panel, but we'd like to leave some flexibility for the wealth and depth of conversations, was to have each speaker talk. We can ask some questions, then we will move on to the next speaker, do a short Q&A, and then we'll have a much bigger Q&A at the end of the three presentations and the three sessions, if that works for you. Chiara, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Anne-Valerie. Thank you so much. And I'm really delighted to be with you tonight. I heard many exchanges you had among us, and including about leadership with men. It was extremely interesting for me. I wanted to also to say that I worked with HSA for the last 30 years, because in fact I was very active in investment, and we had a lot of roadshow around the world with HSA. And the first thing I did when I arrived at the Women's Forum to give back to the community was to establish a partnership we're very proud of with HSA. And thank you really now that Yale joined. I really congratulate you. It will be a pleasure to find synergies and to help to like emerge not only role models, but the leader of now and of tomorrow. Because as you understood, tomorrow it's now. We have to act now and not wait for. And I think we are really, it's really a chance that you have and an opportunity that we have to seize. I would also to highlight, just listening what the conclusion we did with the minister, during this Women's Forum, that it was completely virtual, there were more than 25,000 participants that were attending during the 3 days, and we touched more than 10 million. That means that the virtual system, even if we are really suffering at not the capacity to hug and to see each other, doesn't make, how can I say, interfere with the impact that the Women's Forum can have. And I really would like to invite you all to join our community, thanks to the partnership we have with HSA, and hopefully maybe establish with Yale, because it's a wonderful tool, I say a tool of influence, to highlight the voice, the ambitions, the vision of women, but especially the added value that we bring. We are not in competition issue in men, as you can understand, not in opposition at all. We are there to bring our contribution. We're not asking, we are bringing. And that's make the difference. That's why we're talking about leadership, women as victims, but as leaders that will bring the difference, especially now. Coming back to the barometer, it's a new tool that we just launched that's extremely important because it combines with our daring circle, where I should see it's very active and where we find solution with our members and this mix of private sector, public sector, institution, OECD, IMF, World Bank, and so on and so forth. It's to see how we can really launch initiatives that are not been before in fields that are not gender issues, but are concerning humanity. We were talking about climate change, we're talking BI, we're talking about STEM, we're talking about health, of course, and business. And if you allow me, I would like to explain why this barometer that not only permit us to measure, but give us the possibility to compare the data that we have and the perception. And we choose to do it in G7 countries, because maybe you don't know, I was astonished myself that 62% of the net wealth, it's in the G7 countries. That means that these countries have a really special responsibility in this recovery, because they really have to carry the others and bring them with them, and of course with women. And this barometer is a paradox. On one side, we see the stereotype are extremely persistent. I give you three numbers that really are shocking. First, 70% of the people who interviewed in the G7 countries think that it's impossible to have a career and have a nice life or family if you're a woman. 70%. Secondly, 4 women on 10, 4 on 10 consider the men and women have different brain. Ladies, I see there's a man there. We have different brains. Men are more disposition for science and women for literature. That makes that 32% of young girls just have, when they go and they try to make an education in science, they say, no, that's not for you, that's for men. 32%. Now, we are in 2020. Another stereotype that is absolutely incredible, it's the number of people that considers that women don't have the same diseases than men. Are you seated? But on the other side, those stereotypes we can go forward or we can go back, because with the stereotypes can be really worsened with the COVID. Because during this COVID, as you know, women have been on the front line to take care of the more fragile, but also showed that they were head of state, the 7 head of state of government and women dealt with the crisis better. The women who were in private equity, in France, we have, for instance, Virginie Morgon, some of you know, the head of Euraseo. She dealt with crisis better. Valérie Paladichef in Canada, and so on and so forth. Women dealing with money in investing, vice governance. At the Women's Forum, we had the vice governor of Rwanda, the vice governor of Canada, and the vice governor of Italy. The 3 of them, incredible women, that were just explaining how they managed to drive money in a different way. The good news of the barometer, some of the factor figures we already heard in the video, then I would just maybe highlight the good news. The good news is that 91% of the population, and it's 96% in France and 97% in Italy, where I'm now, by the way, are convinced that the priority of the priority is gender equality. And 70% consider that the same salary is a priority. And we are in this, the poll has been done in August, in plenty of the crisis. That means that the people are very mature, they really understand the issues. And of course, what is extremely important, that they're conscious of the importance to same access to capital, access to STEM, and so on and so forth. Then how do we use this barometer? And we use it collectively with the HSA and others. We call to action to the G7 leaders. We wrote to each of them, each head of state and government, even if we didn't have a summit, G7 summit this year, as you know, it's the first time in the story, because we have measure, very concrete measure that we can propose, very concrete, not only idea, proposals that we can implement, and that, for instance, can be, we don't ask money, we don't think that women need money, but they need to be there where they can take decision. And I give an example of what we do together with you. Just in the video said about the tool that we are doing with HSA. That's extremely important because women are more or less 242 business-owned companies in the world. And worldwide, we have access to less than 1% of the procurement. That means that we really have to change the system of the procurement, because it's a waste. It's just a waste, because as you know, if we had more equality in economy, as McKinsey always says, we could have $28 trillion added at the GDP from now to 2025. And the other thing that's extremely important, because you are leaders, it's the governance. I think we don't say it enough. It's not we don't want to take the place of man, but if you're not in the boards and in the executive committees, in position where we can really make the difference, we will not be able to give these insights that are absolutely necessary. You are talking about a new way of leadership. I think that a new way of leadership, it's of course also care leadership. We showed you in the crisis, and when I say care, it's not the nurse. It's taking care of the person that's behind. It's designing the city of the future, putting the human being at the center, not only having the wonderful architectural gestures. It means when you invest in a fund, see the purpose behind and the social impact and the economic impact together. And the last thing I wanted to see, because many of you will become CEOs of companies, you all know that 85% of the decision of buy, including cars, are done by women. And you know what the barometer says? That for the image, 76% of the people, men and women, think that for the reputation and the image of the company, they will check who will be in the governance and how the gender equality and the salary equality is respected. Then you see, it's not only politically correct, it's not just a question of justice, it's business at the end of the day. And fortunately, you young people vote with your pockets or your purse. And I encourage you to continue to do it, because in this way we can really change things. Thank you so much. And I would be delighted to change with you if you have some questions.
Thank you, Chiara. Questions?
Maybe from the States, because you don't see it behind, but I have a picture with Kamala. I had the chance to meet with her and spend 3 hours talking together. Some of you did met her? I really do hope that the duo with Joe Biden will correspond at what is really the society in the States. It's a country that I admire a lot. It's a country of all possibilities, and including for women. And then we have again it's the first democracy in the world with India. Then let's hope that this duo can really give the leadership of women more space and more opportunities. And the last thing I would like to say, this year we heard the minister said we had 2 Nobel Prize in Science. You know how many women Nobel Prize we had until now, since the beginning? 18. And we had 620 men. Then, you know, we have time to make a difference and to take our revenge, if I can say so. But no questions?
I have one.
Oh, great.
Hello. I don't know if you hear me. Okay. So, hi, I am Amina Ścigał. Thank you for your...
You're Polish?
My husband is Polish. Thank you for your time. Just I have one question. I am 34 years and I want to you know, to have a good career. What will be your advice if I tell you that what I have to do if I want to go up?
First, I think there is no secret. For men and for women, it's the same. You have to work hard, be competent, be educated. Nothing comes like that. I mean, I don't believe that, of course, there are some genius. They don't have to work and they don't have to study, but there are some, very few. Then first, be prepared. Be always as competent as possible. And secondly, never let people tell us what you have to do. Decide by yourself. I think that the really leadership of women means have the choice, then have the tools, the education that gives you the possibility to have the choice and to decide what you want to do. Because even if you want to stay home and take care of your family, you're not a criminal. You just make what you want to do, but you have to have the choice. I mean, we don't have to have the people saying, oh, you have to make a career. You have to do what you want to do. Even your 10 PhD, you have to do what you want to do. But have the choice. And the other thing, if I allow me, because you're married, don't let people tell you that you cannot be a mother, a good mother, and work, because it's not true. I have 2 grown-up children. I'm a grandmother. I've always been traveling a lot, working a lot. The only thing that would make the difference, let them feel that they're the most important thing that they are, and that you are, of course, ready to sacrifice everything for your family if it's needed. But if it's not needed, why should you? Why you should not do what you want? And if you want to go on the moon and stay there for 3 years, stay on the moon, and they will survive without you.
Thank you for that. I'm comfortable with that because I'm happy when I work, you know. For example, I have 2 children. The first maternity holiday, I take 9 months, but I suffered about it. But the second one, I take only 6, and I am happy with it. But actually, in the work, the argument is you have holidays maternity, you know, because I am younger, so I am exposed to have other babies.
Sorry,
So
who used the terms of holiday when you talk about maternity leave?
I don't know. Yeah, of course.
Ladies, are you really convinced that a maternity leave are holidays?
I think now me.
No.
Yeah. So I think that the whole paternity holidays, if we change it, it can be argument, because actually now the employees ask, when you answer I want to I want a post with the responsibility, the answer is yeah, but if I choose you, there is a risk that I will be in maternity holidays, and if I choose a man, it's not the case. So
yeah, Andres, you're lucky because again, my first child, I had it 36 years ago. At the time, you didn't say you were married because it was a danger for the company to employ a married woman. And if by chance you are getting a child, you had to hide it. And I was in a very privileged system. I mean, I was working between Italy and France. I mean, I was not, Then now it's like that. But one of the causes of the Women's Forum, we're really fighting for that. And, for instance, I think that President Macron heard us, not only us, many others. Paternity leave. Paternity leave, as you say, it's extremely important. I don't think that Laurent would say the opposite. The more happiest one are men, if they can take advantage and take care of the children. And there's something that nobody says in all the best practices. The 2 countries in the world where the paternity paid leave is the best, it's France and Italy. And it's very strange in countries as Canada, such as Canada, very advanced for feminist diplomacy, very advanced with the number of women in government, or other countries don't even imagine a paternity leave. Sweden is very advanced also for that. And what I really encourage the governments to do, I wrote it down to the leaders, it's to take 2 days before the woman goes to the clinic. And it's not a peanuts proposal. It's something extremely meaningful because it changed the mindset. If the man takes care of the household 2 days before, that means that he takes care that the fridge, it's not empty, that the other child goes to school, that everything's work. means that the mother can just be concentrated on the most important thing, having a baby. And it means that when she comes back from the clinic, the man knows exactly where the sockets are and where the kitchen is, and knows exactly how to help. And it's completely, it's not a joke, Duna, it's not a joke, I guarantee. And even now, I mean, it's, and it's extremely important. And I can tell you that men would be adored to do it, because, I mean, like that, the baby, it's really their baby. It's not just discovering after when they are grown up. And by the way, it's the right way to make a career, because you want not be the one who you have to take the place there and wait, you come back, and so on and so forth. You will have the same thing for the man if they take 3 months or 4 months paternity leave. Of course, then you're in the same situation, and you will have the same career. And I think that it was extremely important that the CEOs of the companies, that, as you know, are 94% worldwide, encourage that, the men. It should not be a woman demand, it should be a man demand.
Yeah, thank you. I share your opinion about this, and actually I'm lucky because my board into work is for that. But the argument, actually, I ask him the question. I ask him what will be your advice for me if I want to have the good career. They tell me, sorry, but concretely you are woman and you will have maternity leave. So for me, for company, not for him personally, but for the company, for him, it needs a lot of work to manage, you know. So maybe you have to start by share the leave maternity with the mother and father because the company will have the same problem for women and men. So the question will don't exist.
Thank you. Thank you. I think we have to, I'm just mindful of the time, and I think both Carl and Florence will have points to share as well. So I was going to ask Kalpana if you wanted to
Sure.
provide your perspective and share with us.
Sure. But as a segue, I would probably suggest to the young woman to maybe start time to look for a new company, actually, because these are quite sad answers. I'm very privileged to work with Caring, where we have a 14-week baby leave for men and women to take away that bias around developing careers for women. So it's heartbreaking to hear that you get these answers, but it's not surprising. So I think, just taking on this theme of emerging strong, I think there's enough that's been said around, I believe, on the fact that women have really been hit the hardest this past year around the crisis that we are all facing. And that women carry most of the burden, as Chiara spoke about. And there's a huge gap with what women do in unpaid labor every day at home versus men. So in the US, the average is 2 hours a day that women do more versus men. And in Italy, it's 3 hours a day. So there's a significant amount that women have had to carry. But I think it's also important that we pause at this time and understand a very important thing. And that's that it's quite established more broadly and in the press that female leaders have handled this pandemic better than male leaders. So countries with women in leadership have suffered 6 times fewer confirmed deaths from COVID than countries with governments led by men. And I think it's great to say that it's no longer a secret. The moment that it could be a very good moment where what good leadership looks like, evolves from looking like being tough and bold and overly confident and very self-focused, to really being more balanced around inclusion and being relationship focused and looking at the collective versus the individual. So I thought it would just take a moment and cognizant of time just to quickly run through how we as women can think about the strengths of our leadership abilities and leadership style. How do we carry that forward in terms of how we leverage that in leading in what I guess is now commonly known as the new normal. So I'm just going to touch on 4 attributes, and I think that there are many more, but let's see what we can get through. So I think the first one, which is really what I think is our superpower, is empathy. And it is oftentimes considered a weakness, but I think that there's enough research that says that leaders who are supportive and understanding of the emotions of their teams and their peers are far more effective, and it leads to teams that are much higher performing. And I think that leading with empathy, especially during this crisis, and during times of uncertainty, which I would say that we are going to be facing times of uncertainty at a much greater pace, is critical. And I think there's enough research that says that women are known to be more empathetic leaders than men. So I think that we can use that empathy and really understand, considering the needs and the priorities of everyone, especially during this time, both professionally and personally. We can use that empathy and that sort of empathetic muscle and our position as leaders to create the best plan forward. And so I think it's something that we should focus more on in terms of really being very bold and ensuring that we lead in an empathetic way. I would say the second thing that women tend to be stronger at is developing relationships. We're relationship specialists. And I think it's positive relationships that we also tend to develop. And it's first with our teams. So female leaders are more likely to coach, to mentor, develop people than male leaders. We take a more strategic approach in our relationships with employees because we generally have less ego. We're open to hire people who are better than us. We understand who our own weaknesses, so we will tend to bring people into the room who can help fill those gaps. So again, I think relationships and positive relationships with our teams, coupled with empathy, really allows us to maintain a high level of engagement, motivation, and of course, to performance. So, especially given the world we're living in, with far more work being done virtually and remotely, and it's understanding how do we lead and adapt our leadership style, especially during this time, and understanding that this line is blurred between work and professional, and understanding that we have to adapt, that others have to adapt, and that we have to make sure that we are taking care of the whole person, is something that, again, is in our fabric and that we should definitely leverage going forward. The other type of relationship is with stakeholders. So, when managing a crisis, leaders constantly have to collaborate with other stakeholders. We're constantly have to get information. We have to ask for quick action. We have to drive constant change in our approach. And that requires building powerful and effective relationships with other people. And how we find those people and leverage the people in the right way to solve problems is, again, key to leading through a crisis. So again, this is another way that we can build those positive relationships, not with just our team, but we have to remember and continue to do with our stakeholders, which again is something that comes usually more naturally to women than to men. Related to that is how we communicate. It takes courage to communicate in a very transparent way. It takes courage to be okay with communicating when you don't have all the answers. It takes courage to communicate in a way and admit when you make mistakes. All incredibly important during times of uncertainty and when we're leading through crisis. And this is something that women tend to naturally do. So we really have to be clear on what we know, clear on what we're going to anticipate, and clear whatever we're doing, the impact it has on people. And so how we communicate and how often we communicate is really important. The next thing is humility. Tons of research that humility is fundamentally a feminine trait. And it's, again, I just touched on this, the importance of acknowledging mistakes and learning from our experience, but also understanding our gaps and taking into account other people's perspectives. These are all critical in terms of building a high-performing team and making sure that you have the collective intelligence of everyone that you need to find the right solutions. And so, as we leverage that humility and think about where men are often labeled as being overconfident, and women are, there's a lot of discussion around women being less confident. The good news is that right now, that's good. That's a good thing, because we then are able to understand our own limitations. The self-awareness we have is really going to help us lead in a way that will drive performance and engagement, not only with our teams, but with those around us. So leading with humility is important, I think, in this new normal. And finally, I'm just going to quickly talk about inspiration. I think it's how we lead in a transformation. So again, I'm going to say that, we're going to go through a lot of uncertainty, and that includes transformation as we think of all the disruption and transformation that's taking place. At times like that, women are likely to lead more through inspiration and really having the ability to take a big idea and a strategy and connect it to purpose. And that's something that we should do very boldly. I would say that, aligning meaning and purpose to what we're all doing collectively as a team is really linked to higher levels of engagement and performance and productivity. So I would say leading both with EQ and IQ and nurturing that belief and the fact that we should be purpose first is the type of leadership style, combined with all the other things that I talked about, that really will help us lead in the future. And I think as women, that, I think we knew that the world is a better place when women, when leaders are empathetic, resilient, and focus more on the team versus themselves and inspirational. And I think, it might have taken a crisis like this to make it more broadly accepted that women leaders are well placed to lead into the future. So I'm just going to hand it over to Florence, who is a great colleague, who's going to sort of bring to life some of the things that we've talked about.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, great. Thank you so much, Kalpana. It's always such a inspiring to hear you talk about this, because it's something that really resonates and that I can see every day in my work. To give a little bit of context to everyone tonight, today, my job is a chief of staff for the CEO, and my CEO is a woman, Hélène Poulet-Duquesne. She's the CEO of Boucheron, a high jewelry brand within the Kering Group. And what's interesting as well is that part of my job is also to orchestrate the strategic planning of the company and the executive committee, which is half men and half women. So actually, on a day-to-day basis, I see the difference between them and their management style. So what you said really resonated to me. What I wanted to share with you today was how is it to work for a women CEO. And the first thing is that Hélène's leadership, it's very, very relies heavily on the collective. So her decision making is very inclusive. She always takes the time to put everybody around the table to make a decision. And this was even stronger during the crisis, when we had to meet twice a week all together to decide what to do with the lockdown, with our employees, how we should communicate to them. And I think in many companies, this would have been done only with the HR and the CEO or the security team, but it was very important for her to have all the stakeholders around the table. And at the beginning, I had a lot of comments from mostly men in the executive committee saying, it's very time consuming and it put a lot of pressure on our agenda. But in the end, it really helped to have all the feedback from different parts of the company to adapt very quickly to what was happening. And I think it really helped us to be very strong and very steady during the crisis. And I believe that the COVID crisis really helped us to see the strength and the positive side of this collective, collective decision making. A second thing that I think is also quite interesting to see in her the way she leads the company is her humility. Kalpana mentioned humility as one of the attributes, and her ability to listen to different stakeholders. So she will always before giving her opinion, she will always listen and even go further and read the weak signals. So she will not only take the words, but also she will understand the weak signal that makes her very strong at anticipating some issue. She will see, even though people will not word it or voice it, she will see that something is not going right, or there's an issue that is, preparing and then starting to form. So she will really anticipate this. And on a broader, on a macro side, it also helps us to see the trends and the industry shift or societal shift to adapt our brand and our purpose to those trends. So I think that's very interesting. And I know that time is running out, so I had just a last topic that I wanted to share with you that is more personal, is that it's super empowering to work for a women leader. I was promoted, I was in Boucheron before, but I was promoted actually during my maternity leave. And I heard later that when I was on maternity leave, she was hesitating between candidates. And she got comments saying, she's too young, or, she's just coming back from having a baby, so maybe give her a break. She'll take the job in 2 or 3 years, so she'll be the next candidate. So maybe, just take the other candidate and Florence can take over in 3 years. So people were ready to just give me a break when I come back. And she took the opposite stance, and she chose me. And she chose me, even though I only had 3 months leave, because I needed to have enough transition with the person that had my position before. So I had to really come back on the day of the end of the legal term. And for a month, she gave me complete flexibility on my schedule, so I could manage my time as I wanted. So I would rush from the job to my nanny and try to manage everything at the same time. And after a month and a half, we had this big, important meeting. And at the end, she sent me a text saying, thank you so much for your work. And now we finished this big budget meeting, let's organize an informal meeting so that we can discuss about your baby and how you organize. And for me, it was so empowering to see that she had empathy. She understood what I went through because she had 2 kids, and she managed a 20-year career in Cartier and then in Boucheron, raising her 2 boys. But she didn't take that as an excuse to ask less of me. She would always ask the best of me as a professional, and she will not give me a break. And I think when you're on maternity leave, it's the perfect moment for you to step back and to give an excuse to go out of the competition, while it's actually the most strategic moment for you to stay on top of your game, and especially if you want to manage the career and the family. And she gave me the opportunity to really go back into the game very quickly and I'm very, very happy that she did so, because now I really feel I'm back in Boucheron and in career path. And I'm very sorry to hear that, you know, it's not you cannot have this experience everywhere, that there's still a lot of bias on women because they want to leave for maternity, from a maternity. But I really believe that the more we're going to have a women leader, the more they will empower younger generation to not make an excuse of a maternity leave, and to, you know, put them back in the game when they're ready to be back in the workplace. So voila, that's the things that I wanted to share with you today. If you have any questions to Kalpana or me, please do not hesitate.
Thank you both. And I think it's important. I know we're running over a little bit, and I want to be mindful to both of you, and we're grateful for your time. So, but I think we have time for a couple of questions. If you have time for a couple of questions.
Sure.
Audience?
I don't have a question. I just wanted to make a remark. I just wanted to highlight that last year, François-Henri Pinault came to the Women's Forum. There was a standing ovation. He said that the people were there. We had more or less 3,000 participants. Those who were there maybe remember, because he was applauded as the feminist man of the year. And I know many people in caring who is one of our partners, and I can say that the mentality, that's not just communication, that they just don't do it. They really feel, and I think that Florence and Kalpana cannot say the opposite. There is really a feeling of the promotion of women. It's really in the ADN of caring. But unfortunately, all the groups are not like that. And really caring, and it's an example, it's an example in climate change, in women leadership, in many other fields. And I really think it's a beautiful group for many reasons. And I'm saying I'm really convinced of that.
No, that's very true. And I want to, 3 years ago, there was the International Women's Day, and I asked a question because there was a panel at the headquarters, and I asked a question about paternity leave. And 1 year after that, they were announcing, you know, the baby leave for women, men, whatever was your situation, even for adoption. And I think that's the most important step towards gender equality. I see it every day. My husband is so supportive, and he's the one taking care of my kid today that is sick. And he just took a leave for 1 day to take care of my baby. That's the 2020. I think that's the new generation. And I see around me within caring, but also outside of caring, fathers that are more and more committed to their kids, that know how to make them food, that know who the doctor is, and that they are the one worrying that you need to buy new clothes. So now the burden is really shifting. I think we're going towards more equality. And even within Boucheron, we saw so many managers, men, sometimes older, 40, 50-year-old, taking their baby leave. And it's amazing to see how it completely shifts the mentalities. So I think it's a very strong tool.
I just wanted to make a comment. It's not really a question, but well, first of all, thank you for your inputs. It's very, very interesting. And both the data from the barometer, but also Kalpana, you're like all of the things that you listed. I completely agree with, the empathy, the humility, like all of that is what I at least try to do on my day-to-day as a manager. The thing that I wanted to comment on is that obviously the world is shifting, and I've been lucky enough to work in very small companies like startups and now in a bigger corporation. And even though, for instance, I do see the differences, and for the good and for the bad, but even though startups or small companies may have this vision of, okay, this is where we'd like to be, and this is the flexibility that we like to give to a female employee, sometimes they cannot do it just because their structures are on the bare minimums. They're very lean, and it's very hard for them to look for replacement when somebody is on maternity leave. So even though there is this willingness to actually be equal and have inclusivity in all ways, obviously the resources are not as large as a big corporation or as a government corporation, and so on and so forth. So my comment kind of question also is like, how can we be supportive of those types of instructors that are struggling very much at the beginning or are trying to, launch a new product or a new service into the world, but cannot really afford to, not have somebody full-time on a marketing job and be, as efficient as bigger companies would be.
Yeah, no, it's tough. But to be honest, even just being a big corporation doesn't always mean that people are even using the resources in such a way. It really comes from leadership. But I also find that starting with small, I see it as a huge opportunity with small organizations to get D&I right from the very beginning. It is so much harder to move a big organization because what we're doing with diversity and inclusion is changing culture and mindset and behavior. And it is such a great opportunity as a small organization starting up to actually think about it at the very beginning, at inception. But I would challenge whoever your leaders are. I firmly believe that where there's a will, there's a way, because there's a collective connection between a lot of startups who all have a similar issue and challenge. Surely there's a way to leverage across, sort of an ecosystem of startups to be able to figure out a way forward around how to address some of these things. But I honestly think, it is certainly a challenge when you're small and your costs are an issue. But a lot of what we do around D&I it's not a cost issue. It's behavior change. It is, just because I'm the chief diversity and inclusion officer doesn't mean I'm responsible for inclusion in the company. It's everybody. So, it really comes down to the individual behavior of everyone. And I think we as women should also come with solutions. What would work for us? Hey, I've got a way. Why don't we job share? Can we create this as a job share? If I'm going to go on maternity leave, how can we work into the budget to make sure you have someone to come in temporarily? I think that, where there's a will, there's a way, but it comes down to leadership, commitment. And as Chiara said, we're blessed to have that where we are, but I think that small startups have a great opportunity.
I do have a question, if I may, and that could be as much as for Chiara as for Kalpana. Do you feel like there has been a shift recently for more diversity and inclusion? And because like Kalpana said, we have all heard that women leaders were better at dealing with COVID. Do you feel like the COVID crisis has created a shift towards more acceptance for women leadership or more diverse leadership?
Amel, I take the question. Yes, and yes. I think that it would be before and after the crisis. As I said in the conclusion of the Women's Forum, there is a momentum for us. It's us who says it. It's really we feel the sense of urgency. And if the 7 heads of state and government dealt better with the crisis, if those who were dealing with private equity funds and so deal better with the crisis, and they were all women, people just recognize it. If scientist people have been so at the front line and women are more and more present, I'm sure that this recovery will be the momentum for women to be there. We cannot, people understood that our leadership was really paramount. And that's why I'm really very confident, and I hope that you will share this optimism with me, because it's really, we cannot go back. It's impossible now. And it's more stronger, if you allowed me, than the Me Too. Me Too, it was to alert against violence. It's to give a voice to women. Here it's to prove that the society needs us. This is the change of paradigm. We don't need the society needs us. Think about that. It's really change of paradigm.
Sorry, but we need to be part of the decision making, actually. And what we lack today in our world is more women and female CEOs. This is what we lack. We have women in the middle management. We have women everywhere, but we don't have enough women as CEOs. So whose job is this? Is it the regulations? Is it the government? Is this the HR department to help women step up? I mean,
Dunya, no, you don't need the HR department. You need yourself. If you want to be in a board, you go there. You prove that they need you in a board. You have, again, and you are, I should say, you are Yale. You are the competence for. And now, of course, there are in some countries easier because they're quotas. But I guarantee, Kalpana was talking about empathy. We need also empathy in the post-COVID, in the companies, in the everywhere. I mean, we need this capacity to take care of people. Then, I mean, you don't wait that people are coming to search for you. You are going to say, I want to be in a board. I want to be in a strategic committee. I want to be in an executive committee. I mean, it's our time to go. Don't wait people coming to search for you. Go.
So I'm going to respectfully disagree with a little bit of what you're saying, because I think that, yes, there are things that women should certainly think about. You know, women, to Chiara's point, women don't ask. There's a lot of research that says women don't lean in, women don't ask for resources, women don't ask for opportunities. Women don't negotiate well for themselves, etc. But there's, you know, there's women don't have sponsors, women don't have the right mentors, and there's difference between mentors and sponsors. I mean, sponsors are leaders who will give up their political capital to help you develop, right? But there is a lot of systemic things that are happening in organizations, like, you know, biases across all the talent processes exist. So unless organizations look at how do we recognize the biases from hiring to driving performance to developing talent, you know, that systematically has to be addressed. We have to do a lot, and unless we have leadership commitment for any of this, then nothing will work. I also think that there's always been I think it's been a few years where D&I, diversity and inclusion, has been a topic. I think it was first addressed with gender, and I think that you know, progress was made probably most impactfully with gender-related diversity globally than anything else. What I have seen in the last year in terms of the huge catalyst around D&I has been what has happened in the States with Black Lives Matter and the George Floyd incident. That, as I've seen with my peers across all sectors, the awareness has been raised exponentially around it, around D&I in general. And so I've seen a lot of companies who leverage this moment to think about how do we look at D&I more broadly. And so we've seen lots of resources being put against it, you know, out with across industries. And, you know, it really is, it's great to see the energy around it. And, but I think it's important and what we're doing at Caring is when we talk about diversity, we're very much reminding people that it is not just visible diversity. So when people think diversity, people often think gender and cultural identity. It's important that we also look at diversity more broadly around what's invisible. We look at generation, we look at disability, we look at thinking style, extroverts, introverts. So we look at, you know, so it's important that there's a broad definition of diversity, and we look at how it's important to bring many different dimensions in to really maximize the innovation and the creativity. So I think that It is a moment for diversity and inclusion. I think that, for different teams and for different organizations, the focus could be different. It will be different depending on what's happening in their own organization. I don't know if that answers your question.
Thank you, Carl. Thank you. Thank you, Chiara. Thank you, Florence. Thank you, Carl. I think we, unfortunately, we need to wrap up. I think what I'm hearing you say is that we're actually at a quite a special crossroad or confluence where unintentionally the events of the past year have demonstrated the value of leadership traits that were considered particularly women leadership traits, the ones we've expressed this evening around humility, around building relationships, around empathy, around managing stakeholders, and maybe around over communicating. And so the COVID humanitarian social health crisis have highlighted these leadership qualities. And so we're given a moment in time where we can demonstrate that these leadership qualities that are feminine leadership qualities have even greater value than were given before. The other thing is we're at a time in history where diversity and inclusion have definitely made it to the top of the agenda. And I usually say diversity is not the issue because I can hire for diversity. It's the inclusion of that diversity. And what do you do to make that diversity a reality in your workplace and in your everyday life? So I think we're at that crossroad, and it's for us to take the next step. And I think both to Chiara and Carl's points, and somebody else mustn't do it for us. We have to do it ourselves. So thank you very much for your time this evening. Thank you for this great debate. Thank you for our panel, for sharing so much of your experience and for being role models for us. And have a great evening, morning, afternoon.
Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.